for coming out, and thanks for your patience this afternoon. You're here for the most powerful medium, so I hope you're in the right room. My name is Melissa C. Potter. I'm head of social impact and communications for Odyssey Impact and Transform Films. So with offices in New York and LA, we produce award-winning documentaries, one of which you'll see today, Milwaukee 53206, also the Peabody Award-winning Newtown, and The Rape of Recy Taylor, which you can catch now on Stars. We take the emotions that our films generate and we channel them into secular and faith collaborations that inspire change makers to action, locally and nationally. We believe that when more people are exposed to stories that highlight the human cost of injustice, it creates empathy and compassion. In turn, communities are brought closer together, eliminating fear through the universal power of humanity. Today, we all know the US incarceration rate is the highest in the world, and this socially engineered atrocity has particularly illuminated the ways in which this moral problem disproportionately affects and dehumanizes Black and brown citizens. 53206 in Milwaukee is the zip code with the highest number of incarcerated African American males across the country. This documentary sheds light on a nationwide dilemma and contributes to a growing national conversation already taking place amongst those who are demanding justice regarding prisons at the state level. Through the lives of Beverly, Chad, and Dennis, we see firsthand experiences of the pressure and pain regarding the effects of mass incarceration. The film runs about 50 minutes. Following the film, we'll have a great panel discussion, so please enjoy.
Than any area in the entire world. Not because they were hardcore criminals, because if you let the truth be told, we're no more safe.
We're tired of opening the paper and seeing some negative statistics about our community.
Men from our community, you just don't see them no more. And you don't think about the fact that they're doing 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 150 years. 1.5 million Black men are missing from our society.
That was a library, they removed that. You haven't seen a lot of transformation as far as good things coming into the neighborhood. Everything around here used to be Black-owned. A lot of the people in the community who were business owners moved out of the neighborhood.
Good day to you, Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, and Waukegan, Illinois. This is your gospel hostess, Sister Soraya, and my co-host, Brother Dennis Walton, from Mayor Tom Barrett's Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. We have the one and only, the Honorable Chief Ed Flynn of the City of Milwaukee. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Well, good morning, and that's the nicest thing anybody said to me all day.
Well, hopefully you'll have many more nice things said after you get off the radio.
Good morning to you, sir. All right.
The 53206 zip code has the highest rate of black male incarceration in the nation. I just wanted to just get some feedback from you on what you think about that, the fact that there's such a high incarceration rate in our community.
Well, I think you have to examine it in the light of an entire interlocking network of social ills. Black male incarceration is a terrible thing in terms of its impact on the stability of neighborhoods, but it's an outcome of a whole lot of other instabilities in these neighborhoods that are creating this, no-win situation. Over the last quarter of a century, the United States has decided to delegate its social ills to the criminal justice system. Where the rest of the help is remains to be seen.
My husband, Baron Walker, has been incarcerated for 21 years.
It always feels like there's something missing.
My name is Baron Walker. I grew up in area 53206. I'm in here for 2 bank robberies, 2 crime armed robberies. I'm not one of the guys sitting here saying, I didn't do it, I ain't do it. I'm given a 35-year sentence for 1 bank robbery and a 25-year sentence for the other, and they ran it for the second tier. So basically gave me a 60-year sentence.
I got the crown right now, you feel me?
Mama.
And if we go up there later on, you know what's going to happen.
It's so amazing.
On me. DJ, you better not say nothing. I know him.
Yeah, let's start.
Whoever did this ice need to pick it up while I here.
So y'all have me stepping on ice. Baron never forgets a birthday. He never forgets a special occasion. He's very, very active.
Hi.
Hey, baby.
I was calling the... Huh? Oh, I just grabbed the phone because I was just seeing how your day been.
Just got done playing basketball. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing today?
Fine. Fine, no time. I ain't took the shot yet, so...
Yeah.
I'm sure we do. I'm steady in like I want to be by myself.
That'll be happening. I did try other relationships, but I got to a point where I wasn't happy with that. I would much rather wait on him. Baron has always been accepting of all of my children, and he just always has loved them like they're his own.
What up?
Hey, man, who's this Jason?
Yeah.
What, you sound like my daddy?
Huh?
Man.
It's all you. That's my beard. My beard making my voice deep.
Your beard making your voice? Yeah, okay, that's right, dude. Hello? Hey, Summer.
Hello.
I miss you.
On the count of 3, we're going to sing happy birthday. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Shayla. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
I would describe the relationship between my mom and Baron as caring, love, respect, all of the above. Now, when they got married, like, it was, she just glue every day.
Love you, baby. Have a good night. Okay.
They go way back, though. Like, they were telling me stories. They go way, way back. So when they was shorties. So that's a plus. I mean, Dana, like, got to marry her, like, dream god.
I used to live right here in this lot next door to Baron's house.
She was just that little girl I really, at first, didn't pay her much attention to, but I didn't know she was paying attention to me.
I was a nerd. I was always in a book or writing something. I like poetry and I like to write songs. Always about love, you know, always about love.
I didn't realize Beverly had a crush on me until I was like 15, 16.
One day there was a shooting in the neighborhood and I called Barron. Before I could even get in the house, he was here and he was dragging me up the stairs. One of the bullets made it through the door, and it got him in the knee, and it got me on the shoulder.
And the same bullet that grazed me, it grazed Beverly.
If it wouldn't have been for him, you know, I probably wouldn't be here today.
2 days later, she told me that she no longer wanted to just be my friend, and that she wanted to be my girlfriend. I actually didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I was more devoted to the streets.
He felt like he wasn't good enough. And so we were not living together at the time that he committed his crime.
Even when I first got arrested, she came to visit me in the county jail. And what surprised me is that she still had in her mind that we were going to be together.
When we weren't together, I realized that there was nobody else I would want to be with.
Yeah, this is usually how it goes. Classic 24th Street. Pit bulls and basketball. Alley ball. You see all the negative things that's happening in the neighborhood, right? What are you doing to make sure that you don't go down the same road that you see a lot of people in the neighborhood going through?
Being myself.
Being yourself? And what does that mean?
Going to school.
What's some of the things you want to do, though, beyond school that's keeping you focused?
I wanted to start like this little organization for the kids, for the little kids and of all races, the League of Extraordinary People. You know,
the League of Extraordinary People.
And just to help them activities if they ain't got family, we could be a second home to them. You know, help them out with what they want to be and help them follow their dream.
Yeah. What made you think of that?
Seeing people falling.
Yeah. We got a lot of them falling, don't we, man?
We are working in terribly disadvantaged communities in which, you know, violence and substance abuse are but outcomes of generations of social breakdown and poverty and unemployment. And if we're going to deal with one of these things, we have to deal with all of them.
This is a long time. I started crying up under here.
My mother always asks Farron, when is he coming home? I'll never forget when our oldest daughter went to prom. Farron felt so cheated that he couldn't be there. He wanted to grill the boy. He wanted to scare him, intimidate him, tell him, have my daughter home by midnight. He said, that's something I'll never be able to get back. I feel exhausted. My day starts with me going by my mother's house, and then I work a couple hours. By that time, it's time for me to pick up my kids from school. So I get them, and while they're eating, I go to my mom's house. I feed her, you know, and by that time, I'm getting her ready for bed, and I have to come home and get my kids ready for bed. And then, you know, I go back to my mom's house and make sure that I lock every door so that she doesn't wander off. And then I get to bed around midnight. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, it starts all over again. If I didn't have faith, I know that I couldn't make it. You know, my faith in God absolutely gives me the strength that I need.
Okay, let's start on. Riding the white pill, finna go see B. I'm so tired, man, just let me be. White beat that. Where to? Oh my gosh. I'm with my crew.
That white I'm looking better than you.
That's just what we do. Y'all think we looking all cool? But I'm just with my crew. Hey. We all got on them Tic Tac shirts, you know what it do. Yes, I do.
I'm talking, man. About to go to prison and act a fool.
We're on our way to see Baron. The whole family is with us, all the kids and grandkids.
So when they come in, I give everybody a hug, a bear hug. I squeeze everybody, and I kiss my wife. I get to kiss my wife. Every time when I see them talking and remembering them as babies, they amaze me. I want to be home with them so bad because although I contribute in those small moments, I just feel like it's not enough. My visit, it's a joy, and sometimes it's joy and pain all at the same time. I believe my chances for parole are very good. I accomplished all my program needs. They have been completed years ago. What more does Wisconsin need to know in order to find out that I'm not a menace to society? That is actually the question I would like to know myself.
The kids was like the main thing today. The babies, you know, seeing them, making sure that they was good.
But it's hard to just leave him. Like when he comes out, I want him to just, let's hit the road and get far, far away.
Back when Barron was sentenced, judges knew if they gave him that sentence that he would serve a certain amount of time. And that's why they sentenced that way. But now that the law has changed, they're holding these old law inmates to the same standards as truth in sentence. And that's not fair. They're doing double the time, you know, of someone else who commits the exact same crime. There are still people on that old law, you know, that deserve to be treated the way that that old law expected them to be treated.
Everybody hold hands. Okay. Father God, we just come to you humbly, just thanking you for all that you've done for us, for allowing you to continue to give us your covering and your mercy and your grace. We thank you for all of the good things that you have brought forth in our life, for helping us to get through all of the struggles. And we just ask again that in your name, you continue to give us the courage and keep us covered in your grace to do your will. Amen.
Amen.
Ever since I was a kid, I was all about family. Me and my mom are best friends, just like me and my dad were best friends. They said, when I grow old and I have children, I want my children to love me the way that I love my father. That was my goal. If I wouldn't have had a family who loved me, my life would have took a totally different road. But just from being around the wrong people, I ended up going to jail. I got charged with an armed robbery. At this time, I'm probably like 19 years old.
I was at home. Somebody said they were going to arrest Dennis for what he is supposed to have done.
Yeah, they took me to the House of Corrections and put me straight in the hole.
That was the most hardest part of all. Of anything that happened, that was the worst. As long as I could have my eye on him and talk to him, but not knowing and not seeing him, I think I'd have lost it.
Mom had to put up the houses, put up money, because my bill at first was like $50,000. And the thing was is that when the victims came in and said, this is not the man, then the jury found me not guilty. Man, you talk about happy. That was the happiest. That was the happiest moment of our lives at that time, because it was like, wow, I'm able to just get back to my life. I took my parents through so much stuff, and I saw my mom just start to lose weight. I started to see her just deteriorate, and just the thought of me going to jail or going to prison was something that was such a burden. By the grace of God, I was able to get back on track. I had to realize how many people I was hurting. And the way that I atoned was going into community work. Everybody know the traditional thing that as men, we're supposed to be positive. You're supposed to be there for your family. You're supposed to be a good person in your community. You're supposed to be educated. You're supposed to be involved. You're supposed to help somebody. Why haven't we taken on those characteristics? You understand what I'm saying? Why have we took on a life of crime or coming back and forth to jail over and over again? What is it that caused us to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again to the point where we haven't figured it out yet? You gotta be able to figure out what's wrong with you, and a lot of it stems from your childhood, from what was happening to you from the time you was in the womb to where you are right now. How many of you have had your father tell you that he loves you? Okay, now for those of us who didn't have that, how did that feel? It means something. When you got a parent that's in your life that's encouraging you, that's nurturing you, that's helping you to grow, that's helping you to become a better person. Being a father is a skill. It is a skill that you can develop and that you have to get better and better at every day.
I do stuff, you know, to support my little youngin'. It's my apostles in there. God show him the love I ain't get.
So basically, that's why I'm there. Because my pops wasn't there. I wanted to be better than my father. You know what I'm saying?
I do the same shit my dad did. You know, I kind
my
of
father didn't get me. You know what I'm saying? As a child.
Yeah, I am following in the footsteps because, you know, I'm in jail right now, so I sound like a little hypocrite. But you know what I'm saying, though? Like,
I heard a joke that's not funny most recently. What's the most confusing day in the ghetto? Father's Day. Whoa.
I never even heard of Father's Day because I never had a father until I got older and had my own kids. So in my house, it wasn't a Father's Day at all, ever.
So it's our responsibility as men, if we want to improve and be successful, we can change this shit overnight. Overnight. By just committing to knowing how to take care of ourselves better, man. All right? Yeah. All right, man, let's circle up.
Thank you, God, for everything that you bring us to this topic today. And let us continue to ourselves to be here as a father for our children. Give us strength. Give us the power. Everybody say amen.
Amen. All right.
I was released about 5 weeks ago from the House of Correction in Franklin, Wisconsin. My adjustment has been good. It just requires a lot of patience.
What do you want, Josiah? Cheeseburger?
Fries.
Okay. I've been in the criminal justice system for 17 years. I probably gave the Department of Correction in the state of Wisconsin about 8 years of my life. And it became disgusting to me. Not a good father, not a good son, not a good brother, drug dealer, womanizer, living up to every stereotype. And I know I'm more than that.
Most men who are coming out of incarceration, they're gonna have some challenges.
I met Dennis Walton there, and right away, I knew that he was somebody that wasn't gonna let you just lie to him or be just anybody in front of him. We're gonna get to the core of what's going on with you as a man so that you can figure out how you can be a better person and a better father.
A lot of times men don't know how to humble themselves and acknowledge the fact that they need help. When you're able to show humility and open yourself up to being something different than what you were, I think that, you know, helps move you forward.
Can I have a Max toy?
Mm-hmm. This is the point of life where I'm at right now. I'm finding things to do that are not hurting the society that I'm a part of. gonna go down a clean slate because I'm trying to get some things off my record. Whatever I can get, I'll take.
So basically what we do is we provide an initial consultation. We screen the whole background. It's very important that you know what it looks like because you want to know what employers see when they look you up. We can't just always assume.
Burglary, party to a crime. That's the one that I think hinders the most.
And then it says something about a taxi cab.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one is contempt.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first step to getting anything expunged is a letter to the judge.
Okay.
You don't have to write a novel or anything. Answer the question, you know, if you were to wake up without this record tomorrow, how would your life change? Like if you was to get a clean slate, what would you do?
To be a part of human services right now.
To be a part of human services?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, to go in that field?
Yeah, and it's less likely that I would get that held against me, but who's to say that it won't?
Okay.
It's still a crime.
You know, this is not something that is an automatic thing. It's not something that I can't even say absolutely this will work.
Right.
But
yeah, I really enjoyed it. I got to see what the big room. What was it? How many people sit?
2,000.
2,000 people.
So you came to the release, right?
I wasn't working at Odyssey yet.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't there yet, but
okay.
You know, 3 cases, all that's gonna come into play. And I can't even say that that's gonna be favorable.
Is that the right though?
Honestly, I have to be honest.
1,000. God said he hold 2,000. He said he was packed.
It's like hearing that you got cancer that you can't get rid of. You know that?
I would love to say absolutely, Mr. Wilson. Let's go ahead and fill this out so we can get this done. I would love to be able to say that.
That's not how it works for me in my case.
So technically, you got 2 things you can get expunged out of those.
Okay.
You got this 2,000.
Let's smile about it.
You got this possession charge you can get expunged.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the information.
You are welcome.
Gotta find some kind of comedy about it. Everybody's a hypocrite. Laws are broken. Not everybody gets caught.
It's just walls on top of walls that's up. You can't go into this school. There's a box. You have to check a box. You can't rent entrepreneurship, loans, insurances. It just all goes up when you have that record. It's just not fair.
The photo booth here. We have community improvement here, the pledge activity there, and let your voice be heard there. So you are free to go to whichever activity you choose at this time.
There you go.
Growing up in Appleton, which obviously at the time
something that was real serious, man. Just, you know, the fact that you saw the difference between your struggle as a white man and the struggle between black men in their situations.
I've been affected as a young African-American woman, girl even. I remember visiting my stepdad in jail growing up. First time ever walking through those doors, right? And then having 3 brothers. All gotten caught up in the system for low-level offenses.
The only times I was pulled over in high school or got caught with like a dime bag of marijuana or something, and you know, they call your parents and you go home. In the urban communities, you get stopped and now you're sent to juvie. Now you're sent to lockup. Now you're in the system, and now you're set down this path that is so hard to come back from.
We can't continue to see black men go to jail at the rate that they are and expect for us to have a healthy, growing community.
Save our streets.
Save our streets.
There you go. I got it.
You got it.
Drank a little bit. Lightweight trouble, what you would call lightweight, would probably be a lot more major to maybe another family, but as I look back in retrospect, it really wasn't lightweight. And what pulled me towards the streets was the glitz and the glamour of it, instead of trying to go after the things that my mother and father tried to instill in me. I went after things the fast way, money, recognition, everybody knowing that you're about something and that you have something about you that everybody likes. My dad was very disappointed when I started getting into criminal activity. I dealt mainly with a lot of marijuana. I was the only one in my family to take part in street life. Well, there's a stigma that is attached to those that have been in jail. And a lot of us fight through it, but it's a tough fight because you got everybody telling you that you ain't shit. You got everybody telling you that you're a felon. You got everybody telling you that what you did is so bad that whatever you do right now, it won't be able to offset what you did in the past. I'm just prepared to put into work so that I can show the world what I'm made of and let that speak for itself.
First of all, I want to just congratulate you.
I appreciate it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, really, I want to congratulate you. You stayed in the whole 13 sessions of Nurturing Fathers. You were so honorable
and serious about your commitment to be a better man, that you came back a second time. And that said a lot for you just as far as your character and integrity. It was easy to identify you as a person of substance. The relationship that we established on the inside was to help us have a stronger relationship on the outside. And now through that commitment, you will now be working for the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. I mean, you know, how you feel about that, man?
I look forward to just capitalizing on the platform that is given to me so that I can do some good work in this field.
Now when we go back and do our new classes, they're gonna see you coming through the door as a graduate of the class, now an employee of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, and who's coming back to give something.
And it has so much power, and it shows it could be done. It shows it could be done.
This is a rare situation. Most men who are coming out of incarceration would not be able to have the opportunity to work in this level of professionalism.
This is your space, man. And now you got it. You got your own phone, you got your own business line.
A lot of men have to go right back into the environment that they came out of. You know, they may be built up with all of this hope and all of this inspiration and motivation to do better, but then they have to go back to a community to where all of the things around them are negative. The only obstacles for Chad would be himself.
Wisdom is an interfaith network that work on issues of social justice. Beverly came to some events and then was willing to kind of share her story and has been willing to accept some leadership.
Hello, my name is Beverly Walker. We will now share with you a few of the letters from old law inmates regarding their experience with the Wisconsin Parole Commission. I have been incarcerated for 20 years for 2 party-to-a-crime robberies where no one was physically harmed. I acknowledge that what I did was wrong. I am truly remorseful for my actions. I have served more than the amount of time that was once considered a life sentence in prison. I am 41 years old now. I have changed so much from when I was the young, foolish boy who committed the crime. I have a great support system. I am ready to join my family, living outside of prison and participating in my children's lives and my grandchildren's lives. Please allow me the opportunity to show you who I am today by granting parole. Respectfully, Baron L. Walker.
We have one life, but we do deserve second chances. There are nearly 3,000 prisoners currently being held in the Wisconsin prison system who are eligible for parole. These inmates were sentenced in the last century prior to the current truth in sentencing legislation. Many of these people have served the legal time requirements set forth by the old law and their sentencing judge. It is time for our loved ones to be given a second chance that they deserve. It is time to fix our broken parole system.
I wish I could be really optimistic that Barron will get out. There's part of me that really thinks he will. There's part of me that just can't believe that he hasn't been released already, and it just seems like there's no possible way that they could keep him. I am hopeful, but that gets me into trouble. There's so many ways that the system is just rigged against people of color, that it's rigged against people who are born into poverty. And it goes against every sense I have of how America's supposed to work. I have to believe that if people know the truth and if people stick together and if people stand up, that we actually can change the way things are done.
We are very aware that it may be hard for Barron to find a job, because he's a felon. I have no problem creating something for us to do.
You excited to graduate?
I am very excited.
Or are you just glad that this is over?
Just to be done. Hello, my name is Beverly Walker, and I am creating a catalog and online sales component that is for inmates, the homebound, those who are restricted or have limitations when it comes to shopping. And we know that the internet is available to most people, but there are some people who are not internet savvy. And that's where ABLC comes in. Anything that you would need to be done within reason, and that's legal, we can help you with that. Beautiful smiles. Yay! It's funny how every time I think about like being happy, I kind of feel guilty because, you know, Baron is not here to share it with me. Hello. What we're doing? Putting your night clothes on. You ready? Dress like this. No, we're gonna put your night clothes on. You want me to help you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This will hurt more than the other one.
Okay, come on. Just on. Okay. Sometimes my mother she'll make note that she has dementia. Sometimes she'll beat herself up, and it's so hard to see her be so hard on herself. She'll say, I don't know why I keep forgetting. And I'm just like, I can't do anything to fix this. I feel so helpless. I'm hoping that they allow him to come home. I don't even care if he's on a bracelet. I don't care if they have reality cameras all throughout the house. I just want him home. Everything just feels so heavy. Sometimes it seems unfair that I have to make all the decisions. I just don't want to do it anymore. Not all by myself. I'm definitely serving time.
I'm just so thankful to have both of you here. We were talking about the issue of black male incarceration and how it disproportionately disenfranchises us in a lot of ways, just from so many different things.
I 100% believe that there are people who have to be punished and go to prison.
Yes.
The problem that I have is that when people come out, there's not an end to the process.
A criminal conviction should not be a life sentence. We don't want that. We want people to be able to move on in life and restoring a sense of citizenship, take care of themselves and their families, and become integrated in the community and not have the scarlet letter hanging on them anymore.
Thank you so much. These are the type of dialogues that we're going to have to continue to have, just working collectively to come up with solutions.
When I got out, I walked out and Chloe was there. And I held her for the first time. Couldn't do nothing but smile. It just felt like a brand new start.
I have 5 kids. My oldest, Justice, is 15. I've got Jelena, she's 9. I got Jordan, he's 8. I got Josiah, he's 4. And Chloe, she's 6 months.
Jordan is a tough spirit.
You want to go get medical attention, or we gonna shake it off?
Shake it off.
We shaking it off? All right.
Josiah is just kind of like a charmer. He just wants to play. He just wants to have fun.
Other way, Josiah. Josiah, come on. Come on, come on.
I stayed away from my children, and I felt I was not good enough to be around them, and I didn't want them to see me doing what I was doing. When I got out, I just wanted to be able to be more involved with my children. You know, I still got my 15-year-old that's making decisions that are not too good for her. A lot of it isn't her fault. You got a dad that goes back and forth in jail for 15 years, your whole life. Nowadays, I try and be more apart because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed. I can't really say where I'll be in 5 to 10 years. I can say that I'm gonna work hard to get further than I am right now. My father died in 2010 while I was in prison. Before he left, he told me to stay out of jail and that he'll always be with me. So, when he said he'd always be with me, I believed him. So, not being able to attend the funeral hurt. Just want to make him proud. I make my mother proud. I make my children proud. I owe it to the community, I owe it to myself, I owe it to my children, I owe it to the world as a whole to give this place a better person and to leave it better than when I found it. So that's what I really want. That's all I'm gonna, I don't want too much.
Tomorrow, Baron is going before the parole board. I probably won't sleep tonight.
I have good thoughts about him being up for parole tomorrow. I want him to be able to leave and him going to his cell, packing his stuff, not even packing it, just leaving it and walking out. He don't need none of that stuff that's there. Just walk out.
I am writing to ask you, please grant parole to my dad, Baron Walker.
He had made a mistake a long time ago.
My dad has changed a lot because he is a good man and a great father.
Holidays and birthdays are hard without him.
I need him home. Sincerely, Wakir Jones Walker.
I was just checking on y'all. No, Baron goes before the parole board today. Possibly. Yeah, so we should know more when he call and let me know what they said. So I'll let you know. Okay, and I'll talk to you a little later. Okay. Every little sound is freaking me out.
Hey, Mom.
Yes.
What we finna eat today?
I don't know what you're talking about, like for breakfast?
For dinner.
I don't know. What do you think we should eat?
I think we should eat Popeyes.
Oh my God.
It's your hubby calling.
Hello, this is a prepaid
Ooh.
collect call from. You may start the conversation now.
So.
What happened?
Mm-hmm.
They gave me an 11-month ceasefire with the endorsement to minimum.
Okay. How you feel about that?
It wasn't what I wanted or behind. But it allows me to move forward, you know, to be closer instead of still being here. And we know that they say that they really don't provide for me. I was in there for like an hour and a half. They said, you know, my situation is kind of complicated.
I'm glad they not keeping you stagnated. At least you'll be allowed to move along. So that's good. How is the weather up there?
It is snowing. They got what they call flurries.
Okay.
You have 1 minute left.
So then that means that you would go back before parole again in 9 months? Okay. Yeah, this is actually what I wanted to hear last year.
I know. That's what I wanted to hear last year, too. That's why it was shocking. It was depressing.
Other cases study calls may be monitored and recorded. Thank you for using.
Love you, baby.
Goodbye.
That sucks. I know you want him to come home, Mom, but just think of this as a step forward. I mean, he do. He think of it as a step forward, even though it's not the decision that he wanted. Don't cry, Mom. I knew this was gonna hurt you. It's a step forward, Mom.
No.
Even he said it. He think it's a good decision, and ain't no telling what the future holds.
When I look over my life and I think about everything, the good far passes the bad. I'm ready for a change. We all look forward to that change. We all will embrace that change. I know one day I won't have to do it all, and I look forward to that day.
It's AM 1560 WGLB. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, Waukegan, and Chicago. We gotta go. But please stay safe, be strong, peace, and love always.
magic. In the palm of my hands, it's young routine. Past the pitfall, past routine. Daily questions, it routine of a fiend. I think it's too dream, me. Hold up now, you a scheming. I don't spaz out when I see these greens. Only spaz out when the jazz rings loud. And the whole damn crowd looks at him like, wow, wow. But it's the best stress, sex in the text. We so cow, let me volatile. Underneath the door, finna burn out. Packaging, accolade, no name. Promoters are like some overgrown ogres.
Goosebumps, especially because today we have Beverly Walker and her husband Darren Walker in the room with us. Beverly and Darren, do you want to come join us on stage? Darren came home less than a month ago, and this is his first time getting to see the film in a room full of people. So thank you for showing love, and Darren and Beverly, thanks so much for being here. And I also want to acknowledge Keith McWhirter, the director, in the back of the room filming another project. So thank you for your work on Milwaukee 53206. Just to let you know who's on the panel with me today, we have Van Lathan to my right. Van is a screenwriter, essayist, and TMZ senior producer from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's the host of the Red Pill podcast. He's currently developing both film and TV projects and lives in LA. He's here from LA on a red eye, so thank you for that, Van. He's in the process of writing his debut book that hilariously documents his weight loss journey and offers advice on how to get yourself in shape. To my left, we have Reverend Derek Harkins, who serves as Senior VP for Innovation and Public Programs at Union Theological Seminary. He previously served as National Director for Faith Outreach for the Democratic Party, as well as Senior Pastor of the 19th Street Baptist Church right here in DC. He's appeared on CNN, MSNBC, Al Jazeera, Fox, and NPR. Dr. Harkins has worked to engage faith communities in the criminal justice reform debate and is currently vice chair of the board of Odyssey Television Networks. We also have my soror, Indira Hennard, executive director of the DC Rape Crisis Center, which is the oldest and the first rape crisis center in the country. Her direct service experience in many gender-based violence programs has helped to inform her policy analysis that has led to coordinating public policy initiatives and organizing and planning spaces for survivor-led advocacy. Spanning over 20 years of dedicated service in the violence against women's movement, Indira has worked nationally and internationally in helping organizations build capacity to respond to the needs of sexual violence in their communities. And lastly, we have Twyla Carter. Twyla is a senior staff attorney at the ACLU's national office. She works on pre-trial justice reform and the Criminal Law Reform Project. Prior to joining the ACLU, Twyla was a public defender for 10 years. Most recently, she was the misdemeanor practice director for the King County Department of Public Defense and oversaw all misdemeanor casework across the 4 divisions of the department. So thank you all for joining the panel. So I'd love to start with Barron. Barron, what are your thoughts on seeing the film, being in the room, and experiencing your first CBC?
was amazing. I had heard so much about it. Unfortunately, I couldn't see it, so I had to live vicariously through my wife's tales and pictures sent to me. And it amazed me that the first 3 showings sold out. People were surrounding the corner from outside the door of the theater. It amazed me. It's still amazing now.
That's great. So yesterday, Baron, Beverly, and I went out to lunch, and we had an interesting moment where I asked Baron for his cell number. And he paused, and he was really reflective. And so I'm like, well, maybe he doesn't remember his cell number. It's a new phone. He was thinking cell block number. And it made me realize how much language and words really matter. So Baron, my question for you is, how does it feel when you are referred to as an ex-con or an ex-offender versus, which is fairly new language, as a returning citizen?
It's a reminder that there's things set up as like restrictions, automatically closing doors or making it harder for me to reintegrate. When I attempt to apply for a job, fill out an application for something I'm qualified for, my label is something that's first looked upon and I have to give an explanation about.
Thank you for that. And Beverly, how do you think that the creation of and the exposure of the film has helped you to support families of the incarcerated and the impact it's had on your own life?
I believe that it really helped shed a light on a lot of the issues that are out here. And, you know, I definitely know that there are still 3,000 more individuals that are incarcerated with the same issues. And I haven't forgotten about them. And as I still tell them, because we still have a group, that this is just one small, you know, reward that we can celebrate over. And I haven't forgotten you, and we still are fighting this fight together. And, you know, they rejoice with me, but, you know, I was still on the phone with them that Saturday, and we were still making plans on what our next move is. We just have an inside voice now where he couldn't discuss things with me in fear of retaliation over the telephone. Now he can have those talks with me and let me know the inside things that we need. Their loved one can't tell them certain things in fear of retaliation over the telephone and those 2-minute, 2-hour visits or 3-hour visits. So we just have more of an inside voice now who can, you know, let us know those things. So you're not alone. I'm still there, and I'm not going to leave you. And, you know, part 2 of the documentary, I'm still going to be fighting with you. So it just sheds a light, you know, that you are not by yourself. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm still in this fight with you.
That's great. You bring up something that Twyla and I discussed this week in regards to being able to tell the truth and speak the truth. And so though Baron was released, there were a lot of plays that didn't exactly go as we all hoped that it would. And Twyla, you had a recent big win in Wisconsin. If you could share with us kind of just how film ties into social justice and a bit more about your work in the Wisconsin area.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. I would first say that what I have found is that documentary and film is very impactful on social justice in the criminal justice system because it allows those of us who are stakeholders in the system, for example, criminal defense attorneys and public defenders, to use documentaries now in federal and state court to work with prosecutors for negotiation. It helps with mitigation at sentencing. It allows exactly what you saw, to be able to chronicle the life of an individual, one of our clients, be able to express to the judge or the prosecutor that this person is a human being and not just the name in a police report, not just their criminal record that you see on paper. More importantly, though, I think the impact that documentaries have had on the public is educating and highlighting the injustices and the systemic problems that exist in the criminal justice system. And to your question, to see the police chief, Ed Flynn, nice guy, from what I understand, a reformer, from what I understand, not the worst in the country. But the reality is, you cannot have the highest rate of incarceration of black men in this country and not have a role in that result. The police department of Milwaukee, in and of itself, we sued them in 2014, the ACLU and a local firm. It was not my case, it was my colleague's case. And part of that was receiving discovery from the police department, so using their data to look at their practices. And what we learned was, from 2008 to 2017, their own data showed that they were literally targeting black and brown people. The traffic and pedestrian stop rates in Milwaukee were more than 6 times higher for black people than for white people. Between 2010 and 2017, the Milwaukee Police Department conducted more than 350,000 pedestrian and traffic stops for which they had no record of reasonable suspicion of criminal activity or a traffic or vehicle equipment violation, which was required by the Fourth Amendment. At the time of filing this case in 2014, and it was attacking their stop and frisk policy and practices at the time, in Milwaukee County, more than half of black men in the 30s and 40s had served time. And we saw the statistic on the screen earlier that in the zip code 53206, 62% of all men had spent time in an adult facility by the age of 34. Milwaukee was the most segregated city in the country. We settled that lawsuit in July of this year, over $3.4 million. Part of the consent decree in the agreement was that the police department had to change its practices, overhaul policies, training, supervision, accountability, and community engagement. So while I watch the police officer talk about the instability that exists in neighborhoods, there's an absolute role and a direct path to mass incarceration that comes from decisions that are made by police officers and police departments. Along that same line, prosecutors as well have a direct path to our mass incarceration result that we have, as well as in Milwaukee. We heard from John Chisholm in the documentary, also very popular in the community, reform-minded, and yet again, you cannot have, this documentary was made in 2016. In 2018, Milwaukee still has the honor of the highest incarceration of black men in the country. So when we know that, and as I sit here today, I can tell you, if you are caught with the second possession of marijuana, it doesn't matter what size, prosecutors have the discretion to charge you with a felony. So you heard the senator's aide in the documentary talk about his multiple times that he was caught with a dime bag, and they would call his parents or send him home. Think about this. In California, Washington, and Colorado, white people are making millions of dollars off of selling weed, and black people are going to prison for years behind weed. When I think about the prosecutor's office in Milwaukee, the fact that they have roughly 120 prosecutors, 2 black prosecutors, so they don't even have the representation that they need for incarcerating with the number of people that they are in the black community. 80 to 85% of all elected prosecutors in this country are white and male, and they run unopposed. That's on us. That is on us. When I think about prosecutorial and judicial discretion and what was highlighted by this documentary that we watched, highlighting the different systemic problems that exist in our system, we heard from Dennis Watson, whose bail was set at $50,000. Cash bail was never meant to keep people in jail. It was always supposed to be used as the last resort. The presumption is release without conditions, and that presumption can only be overcome by a judge who makes an individual finding in an individual case that there are no less restrictive means to ensure either returning to court or that you will not be a danger to the community. The fact that he went to trial and his victims said that it wasn't him and he was found not guilty is fantastic. But if his victims knew that he wasn't the person at the time of his trial, then his victims knew it wasn't him when the charges were filed against him. And you know the bail system is flawed when people who have access to money and resources, who might actually be a danger to the community, can pay to get out of jail pre-trial, and a poor person who throws a rock through a window cannot. When we think about prosecutorial and judicial discretion, and we want to talk about disproportionate sentencing. Mr. Walker was sentenced to 35 years for his first robbery, 25 years for his second robbery. Somebody made the decision that that was the appropriate number of time that this man should spend in a cage. The judge or the prosecutor made the decision. The judge ultimately to sentence him to 60 years, running his sentence consecutive versus concurrent, which means he had to serve one sentence on top of the other. 60 years. You can kill people in this country and get less than 60 years. When we talk about the Truth in Sentencing Act that we saw in the documentary, and the fact that Mr. Walker and 3,000 other people are being impacted by a law that they weren't even sentenced under, so it's being applied to them retroactively. Think about this. If Wisconsin were to legalize marijuana tomorrow, do you think they're going to let out black and brown people who were convicted prior to that? No, they're not. This is on us. When we talk about reentry, and we hear from Chad Wilson, and he talks about the Clean Slate program, and the idea that you have to write a letter to the judge and basically beg another judge to deem you worthy to get out to start over again, versus codifying laws that exist in other jurisdictions that allow you to have expungement automatically. Once you're released, pay your legal financial obligations, including the restitution you owe to victims, complete all of the conditions of your release and stay out of trouble for a certain amount of time, and then you automatically get expungement. There are other jurisdictions that have banned the box. So exactly what Mr. Walker is talking about, he doesn't have to deal with in Wisconsin, where you don't have to check a box to say that you've been convicted of a crime. He is absolutely now going to fall prey to the stigmatization of having a criminal record and the collateral consequences that flow from his time in prison. And then underneath all of this is the fact of the racial disproportionality that exists. Not only have we criminalized addiction, mental illness, and poverty in this country, but the only time you see the numbers for white people that are higher in the criminal justice system is when there is a benefit to the defendant. That is the only time. So I have personally found that the use of documentaries and film to be very impactful on the criminal justice system. But it is up to us on what we're going to do with that information.
That's great. And so many of us know Van from TMZ, and he's been doing that work there for a really long time, but in the past few months came to a national prominence due to the miseducation of Kanye West. With where you work and the current media landscape, how do you maintain your integrity and keep your voice loud and clear and through your social media channels and your appearances in the TMZ newsroom?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Beverly and Barron for being here, because I need that happy ending, man. I was going to need a hug after that if y'all didn't show up, so I'm praying for y'all. I'm glad you're out, brother. For me, so first of all, there's TMZ, which is celebrity news. If you like TMZ, you go home, you watch it. If you're looking for TMZ to be socially responsible or to get any cues from there, I think you're going to be disappointed. For me personally, there's a debt to be paid that demands my attention no matter where I would be working. I'm from South Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and many of the men that I knew growing up, many of my uncles and cousins, I didn't even learn their true life stories until much later on, because I met them while they were incarcerated. I saw firsthand sort of the toll that these social ills sort of take on a community, because I was raised in that. And so being bussed around at different schools and sort of understanding what it meant to be a man and what it meant to represent my family and represent my father and the legacy of people that had come before me, I'm never going to be in a place where my voice is not going to be useful to my community. That's difficult to do in some places, but for me, the worst thing that could have happened to anyone who is the enemy of the empowerment of black and brown people was Kanye West walking into that newsroom that day, because once I got the platform, I'm really never going to give it back now. So I think it's important for anybody that, you watch them and you get entertainment from them and you get sort of joy from doing what they're doing, you got to pay the debt. And the debt is that in my community, where I grew up, people still don't have what they need. And they don't have the education that they need. They don't have the forward momentum that they need. And they also don't have the positivity and the affirmation of life. I think a lot of the things that we're discussing, they become cyclical because there are a different set of priorities for our brothers and our sisters inside the community, and those priorities are dedicated to survival. And anytime you're trying to survive, thriving is going to be difficult. So when I see documentaries like this, they sort of remind me that where I'm living at in Hollywood and Los Angeles, that all of that stuff is kind of not real. And it's made up of people who are sort of coming around trying to chase dreams that they formed when they were children, where there are a lot of other people that are living nightmares that they've been living since they were children. So for me, and by the way, not just me, but almost everyone I know, I've never been around a group of people, entertainers, that are more dedicated to changing some of the things that have been systemic in our communities for a long time. It's really a good group of people out there. I just think you have to use that time to kind of invest into where you came from and where you want your community and your people to go. And it's not easy, and it's a difficult conversation to have, even sometimes amongst each other, because the reality is, it's difficult to be a trusted voice if you work for TMZ sometimes, because the coverage there, I almost lost my job behind Marion Barry, behind a headline that we ran there, and it's the first time I ever caught myself yelling at my boss. But the important thing is, if you lie down in those situations, you'll lie down wherever you are. So you have to give it a shot, and you have to not ask for and not even demand, but take your respect from people that would disrespect your heroes and disrespect your culture. So that's wherever you are.
And it was because of Van that I donated to Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights camp. With Nike in the news because of their support, do you think that corporations are really interested and invested in digging into these really difficult topics surrounding police brutality, mass incarceration, and so forth? And why not?
Corporations aren't heroes. Corporations live to they're beholden to stockholders. If they're beholden to the financial interests of who they are. Colin and Nessa are my people. I love them. And if you are repped by a swoosh or repped by any corporation, you should make them be somewhat accountable to the communities and to the causes that you care about. But just remember, if it doesn't make sense for them financially, they are not going to do it. And so everyone that is running out, buying Nike gear, putting swooshes all over your bodies, I just want to let you know that was the plan. All right? And that doesn't mean that something great didn't happen. It doesn't mean that it wasn't an overall good. But if you don't think they ran the numbers before they put his face on that ad, you're crazy. The people in your communities are the ones you need to be running out supporting. The people that you need to be empowered that are fighting these wars every day, you need to support them and wear their logos just like you do the Nike logo.
So speaking of communities, Indira, I know that you are deeply vested into your work in the DC area. So how do you think that communities can come together to help support families like the Walkers and Barron and Beverly's story in particular?
I think that one of the things that really stuck out to me in the film is when Beverly said that she's serving time too. And so what we don't think about is the impact on the individual, the family, and the community. When incarceration happens, it's a trauma, right? It's a different form of trauma. And so I think as it relates to the community, I think one, we got to do a better job of reentry programs. We got to do a better job of when folks are released, that there are things in place that can really help them get on the path to wellness and moving forward and not cycling in and out. I think what we see I think that what we see so much is that there's not enough community-based programs to really help folks do what they need to do. And I think that is a huge travesty. I think the other piece, just from a policy perspective, you can't have effective policy if it's not done from a racial justice lens. And so you cannot do this work without looking at it from the intersections. And so that's, where there's a huge, huge missing gap. So I think there's a lot of work in terms of community. There's a lot that community-based agencies can do. Incarceration is a systematic issue that requires a systematic response. And I think when we think about what it takes a village to raise a child. What does it take to heal a family? What does it take to heal a family, right? What does that look like? Because when you get out of jail, it's not just you, right? As we saw so clearly in the film, it's the family, it's the kids. How does everybody pick back up the pieces? Because while you're in jail, everyone's life is on hold. And my sister, my hat goes off to you. My hat goes off to you. Because I think, yes. Because I think kind of the other piece is, and I can never be in a space without lifting this up, is we also got to talk about the mental health. Yes. We got to talk about the mental health, right? Because there is a huge impact when it comes to mental health, not just when you're on the inside, but even when you get out, and even your family and your loved ones. And so again, what does it take to heal a family?
That's a great point. Reverend Harkins, speaking of healing, the faith community can play and has played a major role in many recent developments around areas of criminal justice. But what are ways that you think that the faith community can come together to help prevent criminal activity in our communities overall?
I'm sorry. And thank you. Again, I have to add my voice to the chorus and saying what a witness and testimony. It's a joyful thing that you're here today, but it's a testimony to your perseverance and the inner strength that obviously was so incredibly shown in this documentary that you share with us. Thank you for that gift. What a blessing. And this is a perfect segue because, again, I think that when we talk about the ways in which faith communities can be supportive in this work, let me try to do this on a kind of a two-level thing. Number one, the immediacy of support. As you were talking about being sentenced and serving time, I thought about traumatic stress. I thought about the difficulties that obviously visit upon families, upon spouses, upon children, upon all of those who are part of this larger constellation. And it makes me think, well, wait a minute, there are some immediate kind of human scale things that faith communities can offer in being supportive of those circumstances, in those circumstances. And that's square one. That's easy, or I should say, theoretically it's easy. Because any faith community, no matter what creed or tradition you emanate from, that ought to be what you do. You ought to be able to be in a position to sustain and support and nurture those people who are part of that larger community. So cultivating an understanding of that and coupling that with, and one of the things that the faith community can do is legitimize, for example, you talk about mental health. In Harlem, we have an amazing initiative that's unfolding at First Corinthian Baptist Church, where Reverend Michael Walren and his team have made mental health and access to mental health services and resources a normative thing. And as easy as it is to say that and for it to roll off my tongue, I think many of us can realize that in many ways that's been stigmatized over the years in the context, certainly within the black community, emanating, I'll say, from bad theology, that somehow having the need for mental health support somehow represents some kind of pietistic chink in the armor or whatever. But the point I'm making is that that's square one, being able to be supportive of families, to legitimize those resources. In my years as a pastor, I would sit in the study with an individual and unfold with them their issues and concerns, and oftentimes we'd get to a point and I'd say, you know what, I will yet continue to pray for you. I will yet continue to be that spiritual support that I hope you certainly acknowledge needing, but you also are going to need to couple that with professional engagement and around your stability and all those resources that need to come to them. So that's one, legitimizing those resources and being that place that's seen as a place of encouragement for all the nuances that visit upon families. When I was listening, a lot of, I won't call them triggers because they didn't affect me that way, but for example, when the phone call was going on, and I thought about how many times I've talked to family members of parishioners, and that intrusive voice comes over and says, you've got X number of minutes left. And just thinking about the ways in which the faith community can even out the support that's needed so that it doesn't all fall on a primary, whether it's a spouse or partner, et cetera. So that's, at least in my perspective, the human scale of ways, because we think about the church or faith communities as being that sort of central locus in the community. So go ahead and fulfill that understanding that people have, that you know that you are that place where those points of encouragement and nurture can happen. So that's one. Secondly, and I guess maybe the second level is, it's so important for folk to understand that faith communities can be points of advocacy, that they can be those places where people learn the language of advocacy. You know, again, I think we've had bad theology over the years. Some people think that, you know, you retreat to a faith identity and you're so spiritualized that you don't have to worry about, you know, this old world or whatever, but I think that's the diametric opposite of what really represents authentic faith. And so making sure that faith communities understand that's the place. For example, you know, Mr. Carter, when you were talking, the granular elements of advocacy that you at the ACLU do maybe beyond the capacity of a lot of people in terms of not having legal expertise, but we can certainly be a part. You said repeatedly that it's on us. Mm-hmm. And so being that us, being those voices that advocate around this, I think that's another place that again, faith community can be an incredible instigator for. And it's accessible now. Not that it hasn't been in the past, but there are, thankfully, there's work going on. At Union Seminary, we work, Michelle Alexander is on our faculty, and she's got an incredibly readable and accessible book called The New Jim Crow. Brian Stevenson is going to be with us in a couple of weeks, and he's got a book called Just Mercy. And I mentioned those two books. There are many others, but the reason I mentioned those two books is because in their, again, accessibility, it means that people can become conversant with some of the underlying thematic issues around mass incarceration and criminal justice reform, and out of becoming conversant with that, then become a part of that chorus of advocacy. So I think if faith communities are going to have any authenticity, they need to be able to operate on that human scale of engaging with families in the immediacy of their needs, but then also to engage in that larger kind of narrative of those voices of advocacy. We know that, listen, that there are other religious leaders and traditions who have utilized that voice for whatever purposes they want, and I see them as far from productive and positive, and they're out here, they've got their champion. We won't go into all of that right now, but I'll just say, if other folk can see the impact and the import of how they feel that their faith can motivate an agenda, how much more so should we understand the importance of faith in advocating for those things that are right and just and truly are the things that are what we should be invested in. So human scale, but then at the same time being a part of that much larger voice.
So my question to the panel is, how far can our voices really go beyond a tweet, beyond an Instagram post? What are some tangible solutions and steps that we can all take in our communities after viewing this film and meeting Beverly and Barron today?
No.
Excuse me. What has happened over the years is that we have put a trust in the justice system to do what we believe is right. So much so that we have left it alone, that whatever's going on there, the justice system is taking care of it. And so now it's like those who have been incarcerated are ignored everything's okay there, we are ignoring our family members, fathers and brothers. And the system is outdated now. Some of the things that fit in the beginning and no longer apply. Education system is outdated. It doesn't apply to what's going on today. So a man may receive a vocation or a trade or education now and be released to the street, and it's outdated. It doesn't apply to anything. There's no true transitional system from a guy going to a mental center where he's getting ready to be released back into society, but he's still learning institutional rules, not how to readjust and adapt to society. So if he doesn't have a sincere support system, when he goes home, he might have mental issues that's not addressed. He has no job skills, and a lot of issues that just being out on the street on his own, he has no direction. We need to be more, we need to question more of what's going on with those who are incarcerated. We need to question what's going on with our dogs. Because it seems like the funding that's given to the DLC, it's not geared towards actually doing anything to change or rehabilitate anyone. It's just used to continue to build more prisons. It has gone from the chance of rehabilitation to a prison industrial system. Lock up, throw away the key, no matter what the crime is. So it seems to perpetuate more hardship on the family, taking away parents, and children, and taking away hope.
Can you repeat your question, please?
Beyond Twitter and IG, what can we do today after seeing the film to help make changes at the legal level amongst our families and in our communities?
I think it calls for us to work together and stop judging each other. You know, one of the main things that we do is we are very quick to judge each other. I often tell people that we are so quick to judge each other. I met a woman who was a doctor, and she told me after seeing the documentary that she had worked a double and that she had come off of her shift and she was tired. She backed out of her parking spot and she hit someone. She said, they treated me like I was a criminal. She said, I went to jail. And she said, I was accused of being on drugs because of the medication that I take for diabetes, high cholesterol, and something else that she had, all medical issues that she had, but because of the combination of medical issues that she has. She said, I was so scared that they put, because I was in jail. She said, I didn't have the money to get bailed out, but they treated me like a criminal. She said, I know exactly what you're going through. I said, do you now? She said, yes, I'm so sorry that you've been through what you've been through. She said, but they treated me so bad, and I didn't even do anything but work a double. And I said, that is so unfortunate that they treated you like a criminal. I said, when I go see my husband, they treat me like a criminal too. I said, they make me take my bra off. I said, sometimes they make me go buy a whole new outfit. I said, and then sometimes I don't even go buy a new outfit. I come right back in the door and they let me go through that same metal detector and I have the same exact clothes on. But I said, they treat me just like a criminal. And she said, you know what? They don't treat me like a criminal. She said, but your story was really good. She said, but I thought I could resonate with you if I told you my story. I said, see, that's the difference. She said, I know something bad happened to you, but you don't have to tell me your story in a way to make me feel sorry for you. I know it was unfortunate what happened to you, but don't do that. I said, bad things happen to every single body, but don't judge me and don't try to feel sorry for me, and I won't judge you or try to feel sorry for you either. I said, don't judge my situation, because guess what? The insurance company already doing that. They done told me that when my husband come home, they gonna drop my insurance. I said, so we got enough people looking down on us. Let's work together. I said, will you sign this petition so that so that we can get my husband home? I said, you know, if we just stop judging each other and work together, we can get further. I said, you already judged me the moment you saw me, you know, and I said, we just can't get nowhere if we just keep doing that. You know, I said, so if you feeling sorry for me, we can't get nowhere. If you judging me, we can't get nowhere. I said, let's just stop. You know, we just can't do it that way. I said, you know, we all can have a sad story, you know, and we just can't go far with them. You know, let's just lift each other up and keep on going, you know. And she said, you know what, you're right. You know, and that woman emailed me once a month for the whole year last year, you know, and we just kind of talked back and forth. But, you know, I didn't need her sad story, and she didn't need mine. I wasn't sad. You know, I was able to talk to my husband. We went through things. We go through things. But he right here right now, and I'm good, you know. I'm good. So we have to lift each other up, you know, and support each other. And through all my efforts to get him home, you know, I've walked, I've done petitions, I've, you know, asked people I've begged people, and I wasn't too proud to beg, you know, sign this, you know, I've talked in front of people, whatever I've had to do, you know, I've done it. You know, and that's just what it was. You know, I've been decent, respectful, courteous, kind, and I've just done it. You know what I'm saying? Because I knew that it would take whatever it took, because when he tried to prepare me for the fact that they would not let him come home, I believed in the system instead of believing him. I thought the prisons are overcrowded. They're going to let you come home. You're being paranoid. And when they did not let him come home, when he qualified to come home, it broke my heart that I did not believe him. And I could do nothing to rectify it but do everything to make sense of the situation. And so I got educated real quick. And I just did everything that I could. I joined organizations, I did walks, rallies, every single thing that I could. And even though I don't like taking pictures, I don't like being up here, but I love you all. But I'm here because not only is it a fight for him, I made a decision that this is what I'm called to do now. And I'm not just doing it for him anymore. You know, this is what I'm called to do, because this is an injustice that has called and pulled me. And now I have to do it for more than just him, more than just me. And I'm here now. So this is who I am. And I've accepted that. So that's what we have to do.
Your comments made me think of 3 things that I always tell high school students. 1, all it takes to become a client of a public defender is to be accused of a crime. That's it. An accusation gets you in the criminal justice system. 2nd, no human being deserves or should be judged by their worst decision. And 3rd, we always judge each other's decisions without knowing what we had to choose from. But to answer your question directly, I would say we have to stay engaged with the system. We have to know who's running for prosecutor, who's running for the police chief, and who's running for judge. Those races are on the local level. No one pays attention to them. And those are the individuals who are directly making the decisions that impact our communities. There are human beings making those decisions every single day. Stay engaged, know who they are, be vocal, hold them to what they tell you in all of their campaign promises, and vote them out when they don't do what they say. It is ridiculous to be sitting here 2 years after that film was made, and Milwaukee still has the highest rate of incarceration of Black men. I would say to please stay engaged and serve as a juror. Black and brown people typically don't want to be on juries. We're always looking for reasons to get off. And yet we don't understand that we are most often the defendants in those cases. And it's not to say that Black and brown people are always going to say, you're not guilty, not at all. But I promise you, having somebody in the room to talk during deliberations about why a young Black man may run from the police, and doesn't mean that he's guilty, but he might just be scared, needs to be a voice that needs to be heard during deliberations. Get involved in your community and start community bail funds to help with bail reform. talk to legislatures and the police, prosecutor, and judges about the school-to-prison pipeline and demand that school resource officers in schools are not incarcerating our kids by putting them in detention, treating white kids differently than black and brown children when they all do the same thing. They're just being kids, but they're being treated differently. Go to your legislatures and make sure that they're passing laws like ban the box or sentencing laws that actually make a difference with regards to mass incarceration. Stay involved with legal financial obligations. The fines and fees that people who are released from prison have to pay when they get out and the interest that is attached to that, they have the choice between paying their legal financial obligations or paying their child support or their rent or their mortgage or what have you. We have to end debtors' prisons in this country. And also being aware of exactly what Mr. Walker talked about, the collateral consequences that exist. So for all the professional folks who know business owners, apartment landlords, make a policy and a rule that you will allow your business or your apartment to be rented to folks who have criminal backgrounds. Because at this rate, damn near everybody's got a criminal background. And if we don't start making differences, we're going to continue to stigmatize our own people and make them not be able to contribute to society. Improve conditions in the jails, exactly what Mr. Walker was talking about, the conditions in jails and prisons. Stay engaged, because our family members and our community members are in there. Is there programming for them to get an education, to get some skills when they get out? Is there somebody helping them write a resume so that when they return to the community, they can reintegrate successfully? And of course, I would ask you to join the ACLU or any other organization that you choose, but stay engaged with us as we are continuing to fight all of these issues on the front line. Thank you.
From a community-based perspective, what I think we have to do is kind of what I call is we have to authenticate services. So we have to begin to form relationships with the prison officials. So for example, the DC Rape Crisis Center for the last 10 years, we have done support groups and counseling at the DC Department of Corrections. So we bring the work to where the need is. And a lot of mainstream agencies don't do that. So if you're able to bring your work there, if you're able to start resources there and form those relationships, then when folks get out, one, they are familiar with you, this is not new to them, and they're more likely to engage. I think what we have found is that one, inmates, want to hear from us. They want to be able to engage in services, and sometimes they have to authenticate us. They have to see who we are and what we're about, and we have to bring that work to them sometimes.
I think one of the great things is that so much of what we're talking about, that faith communities, churches, and houses of worship and communities of worship can really be those points of location to be the points of information and organization and mobilization. So when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to voter education, I think that again, faith communities have every right and every responsibility to be a part of that. A lot of times I've worked in the world of politics, and it's disheartening when churches or faith communities run scared because they think the idea of even thinking about anything that is political is somehow an infraction on their 501c3 status, but that couldn't be further from the truth. And to be able to be educated about policy, to be educated about who's running, and then to mobilize people. You don't have to tell folk. You educate people about who's running and what the stakes are in the context of your moral and ethical and theological tradition, and then send them to the polls and trust the divine for the rest. But I do think it's important to understand that so much of what you all are talking about can find a place of engagement and organization and mobilization within faith communities. And lastly, in that respect, the thing I think that can help kind of fuel the passion and the drive to sustain the work in terms of people of faith and others is to remember, it's awful that these horrible and heinous examples of law enforcement individuals, and it's funny because you had Chief Flynn there in Milwaukee, and I know that in Milwaukee County, that I don't even want to call his name, but David Clark, it would be enough if he was simply the joke that he is, but he's much more than a joke because he's been very harmful in regards to these issues. That's one. And then, of course, Joe Arpaio out in Arizona, and they're just representative of a whole line of sort of thinking that sort of glorifies this idea of retributive justice, the idea of well, how hard can we make the the criminal justice system to really put infractions upon these people, and it's painful to say it, but it's absolutely accurate to say that as they were talking about the truth in sentencing laws and some of those things, they came out of a certain era in American politics when a Democrat was in the White House. So I regretfully say that some of the things that happened even during the Clinton era are part of the unfortunate legacy that we have that point us toward retribution. So one of the things that faith communities can, I think, do is understand that what we really should be motivated by is an understanding of restorative justice. That it's not just about rehabilitation to the idea of fixing something that's broken, but breathing life back into something and making sure that it's viable, and maybe in a sense even more viable than it was when whatever happened that was difficult and challenging happened to engage the criminal justice system. So to say that, well, if we're going to be in this work and be sustained to do this work, that we're about a justice system that restores and renews and doesn't just simply punish, because that's going to run its course, and we'll be no better for it. So the idea that you can preach a while, and I promise I won't preach, but the idea that Brother Walker, you can tell me something that I'll never know, and you can talk to me about depths of character and depths of spirit that I'll never be able to understand, save it be for what you tell me about how you made your way through it all. And so I just think that it's important for us to understand that ought to be a driving, underpinning sort of impetus, that if we're about this work, we ought to be about it because it restores and renews our communities, and in so many respects makes them even better if we're about putting life back into lives.
To the specific question of how far do our voices really go and how far will they take us, I think the answer is pretty simple. They'll take us as far as action allows them to go. And I think about things like, excuse me, like the Montgomery bus boycott, situations like that, where people carpooled and walked to work to protest injustice, where they sacrificed something. And I think a lot of these issues are in the mainstream now. We see them. We're inundated with images of police brutality. We're inundated with images of injustice all around. But the question then becomes, like, how far are you willing to go? What are you sometimes willing to give up in order to affect change? You talked about the Colin Kaepernick thing that we did. And it was interesting how many people were mad about a video game taking his name out of a song. The question for me was, are you willing to not buy the game and then donate the money you would have spent to it to his organization? So is outrage more important to you than outreach is? Like, what are you willing to do, excuse me, in your community to affect a life, or in someone else's community to affect a life, to sort of cement the blocks that are going to change somebody in the long term? Because it's easy to retweet something and feel better about yourself. It's easy to be mad. It takes a single-minded focus every single day to undo some of the pernicious elements of society that have been thrust upon us. And you have to be serious about it. So I know that we live in a time where, social media and all of these things are very, very powerful tools in kind of changing some of these things, but nothing beats a good old-fashioned fight. Nothing beats, sort of rolling up your sleeves and kind of getting to work. And there's got to be some accountability in that. There's got to be accountability. You have to hold some of the people who say that they're for you accountable. And there has to be some system building. There has to be some there has to be some banking. There has to be school, bank, church. We have to build, new societies that maybe our own systems, maybe are sort of things that where we can excise some of these more difficult elements out of our societies. Because if I'm being honest, I think I'm all out of trust in what got us here. I think that we've all seen too much of what this system is to really believe in it. I think it's actually working perfectly. And so, you know, if we're going to really have thriving, suitable communities, we might need to start thinking about the dirty work and the hard labor that it's going to take to build them ourselves.
Well, on that note, I think we all have a lot to look forward to in the work that we can do after today. At your seats, you have pamphlets that tells you a bit more about Odyssey Impact, how to find us on social media. And please also follow all of our panelists whose Twitter handles are posted above. Thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you so much, Beverly and Barron, for making the trip from Wisconsin. And onward to the very tough but important work that we all have left to do. Thank you.